beer, it's good for you.
Hello and welcome to the video. In this video I am brewing a double batch of my favourite Verdant IPA recipe. Many of you have asked about larger batch brewing, so I hope you find this useful. Let's get straight into it. The recipe I am brewing here is one that I shared not so long ago with a single batch video shown on the bottom right of the screen. In this video's description I will share this double batch recipe in its 38 litre form. In addition to this I will share a link to the recipe on Brewzilla too. This has certainly been a very popular recipe, not just online but also from friends and family, so I had a request to make more of this for Christmas, so it was time for a double batch. There is one difference in this brew which I will come to when we get to that part. When you brew a double batch, naturally you're going to need a larger brewing system. The system I am using here is the Brewzilla 65 litre, which I feel is a very good choice for the majority who want to brew both larger and smaller batches from the same brewing system. The process for a larger batch is of course very similar to a smaller system, but there are some extra pointers that I will work through within this video. The first one is to be aware that you're going to need to work your grain more, as you can see me doing on screen now, before you start your mash. This makes sense because naturally you have more grain in the system. I have now just started the mash recirculation. Due to the oats involved here, I have added a couple of handfuls of rice hulls which account for the dusty effect on top that you can now see, but really it matters not. If I now move in a little closer, you can see that these are actually fine particles. The sink strainer that I'm using in the middle will collect many of them, but those that it doesn't will end up as trub come the end of the brew anyway. Here is the same mash at a later point and you can see that things have started to clear up nicely. This often takes longer with larger batches compared to regular sized batches due to the extra grain involved. If your mash does not clear like this, then it is often an indicator that your grain crush is on the fine side. In reality, this will have absolutely no effect on the final beer as long as you follow normal practices for clarity. It is something to watch though, as over a certain point of milling you are going to experience potential stuck mashes and sparges. To use rice hulls on every brew no matter what the ingredients are makes no real sense unless you really cannot help it. One very nice thing here with this larger batch Brewzilla is that I have not even come close to the maximum grain bill size, and yet I am brewing a 6% beer with a volume to fill 2 corny kegs. The pump involved also is very strong compared to the smaller system pumps and makes light work of the mash and anything else that you can throw at it. When it comes to sparging on a larger system, you also have a much larger surface area to sparge onto. Due to this, the sparging time is usually going to be reduced, which will certainly please some people. Onto the boil now, and you can see me skimming the top to allow the top protein to drop down. This is important to do, especially to ensure that the system does not boil over. This is something to be notably more careful of when using a larger system, as naturally they'll have much more powerful heating elements, in this case 3.5 kilowatts worth. The good news is, like with a regular homebrew batch, once you have done this at the start, then the risk of boil over is very minimal. The one change that I have made to this recipe for this brew compared to the single batch one that I shared previously is that I am reducing the boil time from 60 minutes to 30 minutes. This will give the grain flavour a marginal bump, and it is actually how I personally prefer this recipe, having tried both now, but this is just my taste. This preference for me is consistent with all IPA styles. Again, I am using the hop missile as a hop bag for the whirlpool hops in this one, but naturally there are more hops in this batch size. Here I am preparing the pellet hops to avoid problems by using a hop sock and rice hulls as before. Let's see how the pump handles this a little later in the video. For cooling I am using a Grainfather Carafoam chiller that is connected to the hop missile. Here is a look at the connections I am using to do this. As you can see, the whole thing is secured by camlock fittings. On the left you can see that I have 2 kegmenters stacked to the side. These are available in both 29 litre and 58 litre sizes. Imperial sizes are now shown on screen. As I mostly brew to fit 1 keg, I own 2 of these in a smaller size as shown. I have to say though, even if I brewed lots of larger batches, then this 29 litre size is certainly easier to carry into my fermentation area compared to the 58 litre version. Okay, time to deal with the whirlpool hops for this 20-minute stand. You can see that the waters are already gained a very nice green colour and I've only just switched on the pump. You can also see the level of flow that I get through all of these hops in the hop bag that is also going through the Carafoam chiller. Pretty impressive results and further proof that the hop sock and rice hull method works very well when using hop pellets with one of these homebrew hopbacks. Since putting out my first video on this method, I have heard back from various Blichmann hop rocket owners who have tried my method and are equally impressed with the results. You will further note that I am using the flow from the top, which is the opposite to what Blichmann suggests in their product, the hop rocket, but I am aware that many owners of that version also use it in the same way. I would suggest that you try it both ways and make your own judgment, but with the hop missile, this is what I found works best for me. After the 20-minute hop stand, I then added cold water to the counterflow chiller and continued recirculating into the brewing system until I had 21 degrees Celsius coming from the line out. I am using the Grainfather water meter along with a digital thermometer to get these accurate readings. You can see from this previous brew short clip how I have this set up by having the water meter in line with the probe from the thermometer added into the side slot of the water meter. It was then time to start adding wort into each of my Kegmenta fermenters, and after a short time I then pitched a packet of Verdant IPA yeast into each. Once the yeast was pitched, I did my best to rehydrate further from the top using the wort flow, but at this point of filming I had no vision as to what was going on in the fermenter because the camera was actually in the way of my line of sight, so I corrected this afterwards. Because I have no intention at all of using pressure fermentation with Verdant IPA yeast, I used an airlock lid that was added clean and sanitary. If you wish to use pressure, then I would suggest that you do not add any of it until the first 3 to 5 days are over to be on the safe side, because otherwise you will lose the most important feature of this yeast, its fruity esters. Both of these fermenters were then set in a very cool temperature fermentation room with heat belts added that were attached to temperature controllers. The black line that you can see here going into the bottom of the fermenter is the temperature probe from the temperature controller. I am attaching the probe to the middle flat area indicated on screen of the Kegmenta with plumber's putty and find that this works very well for accurate readings and temperature control. This is certainly a cheap yet effective way to go, but it does rely on having an area that is cool in temperature for balance. As I always find with Verdant yeast, fermentation started quickly and 4 days later it was time to add the dry hops. I am using a stainless steel tea strainer here as a container, and I deem this as suitable as it is only half full as a maximum. This is simply to ensure that you get the full benefit from the dry hops. I almost always find that Verdant yeast ferments out fully within 5 days, and these dry hops will do their job within 3 days, so the time of this process is 7 days in total from fermentation start to when this is ready for transfer into bottles or kegs. With all yeast, I like to have some days extra for the yeast to have time to clean up after itself, and Verdant seems to do this very quickly, hence the almost fake-like time frame. One thing is for sure, Verdant yeast is certainly rather special in various areas, time frame being just one. For much more information about Verdant yeast itself, this IPA recipe and also a recipe for using this yeast with a stout, check out the other videos shown on screen on my channel. If you're a new viewer or are not a member of the channel's Facebook group, then links are shown on screen now to join. We have a very busy yet friendly group of brewers from all experience levels. This now brings this video to a close. If you have any questions, then please let me know via YouTube or Facebook. I do hope that you found this video to be useful, interesting and enjoyable. If appropriate, then please like this video on YouTube, and if you've not done so already, then please subscribe. I regularly post new content. Happy brewing!